We've gotten a couple little hints as to why you do these. I'd like to explore that a little bit further. Some people say that to do a documentary, you got to have a fire in the belly, and you have to be out to do something for a cause. And then there are other people who take other views. My own would be more from a journalist's viewpoint, where it's basically show light, you know, and the people will determine what the truth is rather than try and take an agenda forward. And then I've heard some people also refer to documentaries as they're loved because of the fact that the truth is always stranger than fiction. So I'd like to know what drove you into documentaries. And maybe, Kaleo, we can start with you this time and work our way back.
Sure. There's a couple of filmmakers. I mean, my background is, I come from an art background. I studied art, painting, and that moved into experimental filmmaking, and I have a lot of interest in image, I have a lot of interest in composition, and that led me to discover a couple filmmakers who move in a documentary, who make documentaries or consider documentaries, one of them being Peter Lichty or Peter Mettler. Peter Lichty, for example, won the European Film Prize 2 years ago, and he made a film that was about a man who goes into the forest to starve himself to death. And it was all from a subjective point of view. And this was based on a novel by a Japanese man who had the journals of this man who actually did it. So it's based on a novel. And this is a complicated thing for a documentary, but it's a documentary. Or it's an essayistic documentary. And I find that fascinating because it's not about truth in a sense of fact. It's about the story itself and how close that story comes to our own real life. And for me, I'm interested in working with small crews. The development stage for me is very important. I spend a lot of time developing. I do a lot of writing. And to work in documentary, I think there's also the magic of discovering things as you go, and a lot of the storytelling and it also happens in the editing phase. And it doesn't mean that you just shoot everything and then you try to piece it together in the end and see if you have something. It means that there's a lot of things that can happen there. It's a creative process. The editing is a creative process, and this is all much more flexible, I think, in a documentary range. I think it becomes problematic then for the viewer. I think documentary fiction is more the angle that the viewer wants to know, what am I seeing? Am I seeing something real or am I seeing something not real? And I find that a little problematic, and I think it would be good to move away from that, for the audience is not to go with the expectations of this is real and this is not real. I've seen fiction films that are more real than documentary films, and other way around as well, the documentaries that are more fictive than fiction films. So
what drove
my answer? Well, I'll tell you, we met at UCLA, where I transferred from Tri-C to UCLA. I'm a Parma guy. We originally were working in scripted, and all of our friends were sort of doing the whole rip-off Kevin Smith thing. I mean, everybody was writing screenplays that happened in coffee shops where people were just talking about nothing in particular, really. And I think we started to sense that, and sense that as writers, as storytellers, when you're 20 years old, you don't really have all that much life experience. And so documentary for us became a way to get out and meet real people. And the more we started shooting documentary or little reality TV pilots, on our own, the more worlds we got into. We were, we'd be, a front row at a boxing match, or we ended up in Guatemala, or we ended up, in just worlds we'd never seen. And it became great fodder for our storytelling. So we were like, for us, I think it was part of our growth as storytellers. Like, let's get out in the world, meet a ton of real people so we can be inspired to tell better stories later. And along the way, just really fell in love with the process. One thing that Kim touched on, I think, is so important, and I think has helped us, is that storytelling, and I think you touched on it, storytelling, story structure has been the same, forever, since Aristotle, right? I mean, there's just certain things we key in on. And so we've always sort of leaned on the hero's journey and leaned on traditional screenplay structure to help us structure our docs after the fact. I mean, you don't go and you know, change the way events unfold, but you have 300 hours of footage for an 80-minute movie. There's lots of creative choices you can make to tell that story, and I think sort of leaning on our scripted roots to help us organize that story has been helpful to us. So getting in a documentary for us was a way to become better storytellers, and just something that we have grown to love so much that now that's the stronger part of what we do.
What he said. I would just like to expand that now that we are in documentary. I think, you know, some of the stuff you mentioned early on, from the Ken Burns to the Michael Moore and the different kind of things, and this is not going to be very popular in the documentary world, but I've honestly been kind of disappointed with a lot of documentarians in the sense that, and again, there's no judgment. It's great what they do, and there's a lot of expose films, and there's a lot of you know, we're gonna get to stand up for the little guy and bust the big guy, and you know, it's documentarians, it seems, have become kind of the new journalist, and you know, we are going to expose and do all these things. Unfortunately, that also means that not a lot of people in the world go see documentaries. So I think for everyone's here, there's probably 100,000 people for each one of you that won't go see a documentary, but they will go see another movie. And that's where I get back to storytelling. I believe it's easier to get your message out with some sugar. You know, get the medicine in with some sugar. And so our documentary, from the very beginning, we said, needed to be entertaining. And it needed to be something that his dad, who has never watched a documentary in his life, would enjoy. And so
my dad loves anything with Steven Seagal in it, so
you know,
tough challenge here.
And we do have explosions in our movie.
I said, I got a part for you, Dad. You're gonna love it.
So I think that, you know, we went to one of the International Documentary Association events, and you know, one of the things that was like, it's like, how will your documentary change the world? And I was like, you know, let's entertain the people first, and then, you know, what they take away from that, that's when you succeed. And you know, but if we set out as documentarians to change the world and tell you how it should be and expose everything, it will be that niche journalistic documentary world. And I think that there's so many more stories to be told in documentaries with real people going through extraordinary things, that I think that if we spend a little, you know, more energy and of our resources as documentarians on some of those stories, I think we can reach a wider audience with them.
But does that kind of lead to the notion that if the documentary takes itself too seriously, people don't take it seriously? They don't go see it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that there is, you know, there's a world where, you know, inside job needs to be made. There's a world where, you know, you watch Born into Brothels and go, oh my gosh, you know, but I think that because those are the only documentaries that documentarians or documentary associations are pushing, that are kind of proudly wearing the documentary badge, that the documentary badge has now become tainted in the mainstream world of film. And it is very hard to sell a documentary film. Because only a very few, you know, audiences will go see it. We've gotten 2 distributor offers right now. Both of them have said, I would not, you know, I would not.
I wouldn't push you as a doc.
We wouldn't promote this film as a documentary, because it's a story, and it's an amazing story, and it's a story about one man chasing his dream, and it has shades of Rockies, is one review. And so it's something that everyone can latch on to. I mean, we've had top agents talk about PBS and say, listen, PBS will give you a great TV offer. Don't make a video deal with them, because the PBS logo will kill you, because people have such, you know, set ideas of what documentaries are. And when I've worked really hard all day and people are working hard, especially in this economy, trying to make ends meet, they do not want to come home and be told about the awful things that are happening in the world. They want to be entertained. And if somewhere in there, in you entertaining your audience, you're able to get a message through, that's fantastic. But if your focus is solely on the message, you're losing an audience.
Kim, I saw you nodding your head here.
No, I was laughing because I just sold my doc to PBS.
I will watch your doc. Yeah, I will buy it. I will buy several copies for friends.
Great TV.
No, but I think the point is that I think Joke is hitting on something that's a really fiery issue right now, because I've met you guys, and I've met you like an hour ago, and both of you, I saw most of your doc, I haven't seen yours, but have described your docs as, well, you said you feel like a second-class citizen because yours isn't a social issue.
Yes.
Doc, and you
We're
said,
second-class citizens with you.
Yes.
yeah, and
Yes.
mine actually is probably termed as a social issue doc, but I think what's happening is there is, you know, and I'm the first person to sort of champion what you're saying. I think there's a sweet spot
Yeah.
that needs to happen between, there's so much focus right now on how can documentary serve as a tool for social impact. And with films like The Inconvenient Truth, I mean, the truth is it did bring a lot of exposure to the issue of global warming. And what's happening also is in the funding channels, really large funders like the Ford Foundation, which is sort of foundation world, are driving, are incentivizing a lot of filmmakers to be thinking about issue first.
Yep.
And I've been caught in a kind of quagmire about, you know, what comes first, story or issue, but we're sort of a lot of the incentives are driving people to think that way, and I think there is a danger of going too far away from just storytelling and things that are entertaining, and I think the other problem is that documentary has evolved so much from the days of sort of voiceover, that there are so many flavors of them. You know, there's so many genres. There's the Morgan Spurlock, there's the Michael Moore put yourself in it thing. And I think that it's really wonderful that people can create all kinds of genres that play between fact and fiction. And so I think that the more that, it does concern me though that there's a kind of drive to start making advocacy movies.
Yes.
Where did you fall out on? Where do you feel you fell out on the side of story versus issue? Because you do come from sort of like a story-driven background. Like how did you make those decisions as you were going?
You know, I've had a lot of fights.
Yeah, right.
I know it's you know, and a lot of it has a lot to do with where your money starts. Is sort of there's a lot of stuff happening out there where someone like Bill Gates will say, you know, I want a movie on public education, and if it's I'm not judging that at all, but if it starts there, you kind of have an agenda that you have to fulfill. So, you know, in terms of where I feel, I still feel that my job and my loyalty has to be to the subjects and the people, but I do think it's limiting, and I kind of envy that you can just go out and so I think it's a big thing that's happening within our world, and more panels and more things need to happen where people are actually being open about the pressures on us to
fit a certain mold early, right?
Yeah, and if people would get, I agree with everyone here, if they just get out of this thinking of, is it documentary, is it, you know, and just kind of, is it a good film, and you know, and people can have more freedom to create all these places in between, and some of them will have really great ability to create social impact, and I'm sure you're doing maybe some good things around cancer or
Well, see, for me, like, okay, so talk about social impact, you know, are we going to change the school system? Are we going to bust the banks? Are we going to, you know, there's all these, like, big social impact goals. We're going to stop global warming. Our film, you know, our little medicine that you walk away with is, you know, will you and you and you and you figure out what is your dream, and will you go pursue it? Because I believe that if everybody in this world, I believe that pursuing a dream lights a fire in your heart like you have never experienced. And it makes you a happier person, and it makes people around you happier. And, you know, I believe that if everybody walking away from our film, you know, goes and pursues those dreams wholeheartedly, it'll be a better world. And so, you know, I think that we can solve a lot of big issues by, you know, solving the problems within ourselves. And so, you know, at the end of the day, it's just an entertaining movie about a funny guy who pursues his dream. You know, we were able to add that layer of inspiration, but, you know, we never set out to change the world. You know?
But listen, not against where I want to come. We're not like to try and change the world.
No,
yeah,
I mean,
I think one of the side benefits that comes out of our document is something we all hope to do some good. Steve, he's obviously dealing with cancer. So what we've been doing in relation to the movie, we don't really beat the cancer thing to death in the movie. I mean, there's enough of it that he's dealing with it. But he's been doing a lot of comedy shows to raise money for cancer charities, and we were lucky to raise some money up in San Jose. And I think those are things that spill off from the movie. I hope that if the movie is a success, then we're able to do those things.
That's the world that we've created around the movie. So that if like you said, we raised money for cancer, and we're doing benefits, and we're doing all that stuff. The film in itself, though, we're trying to reach a wider audience than unfortunately the documentary world gives us.